Have you ever been there? You're wrestling with a React class component, totally tangled up in the this keyword, and just wishing there was a simpler way to handle state. It's a common frustration. Well, today, we're going to demystify the one feature that changed absolutely everything: React hooks. All right, let's jump right into this revolution.
Okay, right off the bat, just look at this comparison. On the left, you've got the old way. It's a lot. Lots of boilerplate, different pieces to keep track of. And on the right, the new way. It's clean, it's direct, it's streamlined. They both do the exact same thing, but which one would you rather write? That visual difference, right there, is the entire reason hooks were invented.
So, let's rewind a bit. Before 2019, before React version 16.8, if you needed your component to have any kind of memory, what we call state, or use lifecycle methods, you had exactly one option: a class component. Functional components, they were just for showing stuff. People even called them dumb components. This was the world before hooks, and honestly, it came with some baggage. And this really gets to the core of the daily headaches developers had. You were constantly battling with the this keyword, which in JavaScript can be a real trip. You had to write all this extra boilerplate code just to get things working. And if you wanted to share some logic between two components, you had to use these really complex patterns that, frankly, made the code a lot harder to follow.
And this quote just nails the problem perfectly. When you use those complex patterns, you'd end up in what a lot of us called wrapper hell. Seriously, you'd open up the developer tools and your code would just be this deeply nested maze of components. Trying to find a bug in there? It was a total nightmare.
So to fix all these problems, the confusing classes, the wrapper hell, these giant unwieldy components, the React team introduced something totally new. In React 16.8, hooks arrived, and they completely changed the game for the better.
So what is a hook, anyway? It's pretty simple, actually. It's just a special kind of function that lets you hook into React's powerful features, like state, but from inside a simple functional component. And here's a pro tip. You'll always know it's a hook because its name starts with the word use.
And this is the most crucial point. Hooks give you all the power of a class component, but with the clean, simple syntax of a functional component. You get all the features without all the old complexity. Let's see how this works by looking at the first and most important tool in the box.
The very first and most fundamental hook you're going to meet is use state. The absolute best way to think about it is as your component's memory. It's the thing that lets a simple function actually remember stuff from one render to the next.
And what's it remembering? We call that state. State is just any piece of information that can change over time that the component needs to keep track of. Think about what a user types into a form, or whether a drop-down menu is open or closed, or, the classic example, how many times a button has been clicked.
And using it is incredibly easy. It's basically a three-step dance. First, you import it from React. Easy enough. Second, you declare your state. You call useState with whatever you want the starting value to be, and it gives you back two things: the current value, we'll call it count, and a function to update that value, which we'll call setCount. And finally, step 3, you use that count variable in your code and just call setCount whenever you want to change it.
Let's make that real. Imagine a button on the screen. When you click it, your code calls setCount and tells it the new value, maybe count plus 1. That one call tells React two things. Hey, my state just changed, and you need to re-render this component to show the new value. So as you click, React updates the count from 0 to 1, then to 2, and so on, redrawing the screen each time. It's that simple.
Okay, so useState is for the component's internal memory. But what about when your component needs to talk to the outside world? For that, we have our second essential tool, uEffect. This one is for handling what we call side effects. Side effects is just a fancy term for any action that isn't directly part of rendering the component. We're talking about things like fetching data from an API, manually changing the page title in your browser tab, setting up a timer that ticks every second. You get the idea. uEffect is the dedicated place for all of that kind of logic. I love this way of thinking about it, and it comes straight from the official React docs. Effects are an escape hatch from the pure world of React. It's the one sanctioned place where you're actually encouraged to reach outside your component and interact with a browser, a server, or any other external system. Now, all this new power comes with, a little bit of responsibility. To make sure hooks work perfectly and predictably every single time, React gives us a couple of simple but very important rules to follow. And here they are. It's just two. Rule number 1. Only call hooks at the top level of your component. That means you can't stick them inside loops or if statements or nested functions. They have to be called in the exact same order every single render. And rule number 2, you can only call hooks from a React functional component or from your own custom hooks, never from a plain old JavaScript function.
So why these rules? Well, think about it like this. React has no idea you named your state variable count. It just keeps an ordered list of your states behind the scenes. The first time you call uState, React creates slot number 1 in its list. The second time, slot number 2. By always calling your hooks in the same order, you guarantee that you and React are always talking about the same slot in the list. It's a simple system, but it's the magic that gives your components memory.
So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? It's really this simple. Hooks solve the biggest problems we had with class components. They let us build entire applications with just simple functions, which means our code is way less verbose, much easier to read and understand, and sharing logic between components is finally a breeze.
Hooks weren't just some small update. They were a fundamental shift, a whole new way of thinking about building for the web. They made powerful features more accessible to everyone. So the only real question left is, what awesome problem are you going to solve with them?